Seven on Sundays podcast is intended for mature audiences. Episodes discuss sensitive and fraught topics that many teens and 20-somethings face, but may be triggering. The content may not be suitable for all audience members. Please take caution when listening. Hey, Seven on Sundays listeners, thank you for joining us today. This is part 2 of Harrison Haynes' story. You may have seen him on Good Morning America, but this is part 2. If you haven't listened to part 1, we really suggest you go back. But Dr. Chez will give you a little bit of context in case you don't have time to listen to part 1.
So Harrison Haynes is an incredible guest. I too highly recommend listening to his first episode, especially if you have a young child that's interested in gaming, because that's how Harrison was groomed. He was groomed through the innocent, seemingly innocent platform of a game by a 19-year-old. And this 19-year-old went so far as not only to show him sexually explicit material, but also make him responsible for his life and his suicidal ideation and his mental health issues. So again, I keep thinking about this 6th and 7th and 8th grader being responsible for a person's mental health.
Parents ask me all the time how kids can, find pornography, and it's this innocent. This is actually a very common technique of online groomers. They meet a kid on an innocent platform and then they jump over to another platform where they have more one-on-one direct messaging, or they're able to send things. So even though the gaming site may not necessarily allow for sending sexually explicit things, they do have the opportunity to connect with a young person, ask them to go onto a different platform, and those platforms do allow for this. So, mom and dad, this is something to listen to and be careful of if you have little ones.
Harrison's going to dive in with a dream he had, an awakening to, his next step, which is just fascinating and really important. So we thought it worthy of a part 2. So we're going to dive in now. Thank you, Harrison.
Yeah. Well, thanks for providing me space, ladies. The story is really healing for me to share.
Can you share with us again the answer that you got and this dream? And my wheels get spinning with color and everything that I know in dream interpretation about, how this lands and how important that visual is and why it's so important too, why it sticks with you.
I really ended up struggling, especially after that season of isolation with depression. And I actually ended up exploring my own experiences with self-harm. Even after he was gone, it was absolutely trauma. I remember really struggling for like 6 months into like the 8th grade with like thoughts of taking my life. I ended up opening up to a couple of friends about what happened, and they misconstrued the information about, I just wanted to process with somebody. And then the whole school was like talking about it, and I'm still getting bullied, still not making friends. I just didn't know where I could be myself anymore. And I thought about taking my life. I ended up writing a couple of poems to my parents and doing everything I knew how. And I planned the date of my own suicide. And the night that it came around, I was just thinking about all of the people that were going to be sorry for the way that they treated me. And I thought about him. I was sad for my family and I didn't want to go, but I knew that like, there's no hope. There's no hope for me. So that night, it's like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was going to go into the shower and razor blade myself vertically. And that was really the only methodology that I had accessible to me. We had a household firearm that I knew about, but I couldn't find it that whole night. My dad must have moved it. And so I was looking for it and I couldn't find it. So I'm sitting there at the foot of my bed and I'm thinking like, this is it. Like, I'm not making friends. I don't have any support networks. I don't have any communities. I'm not on a sports team. Like, I'm not even doing well in my classes. So this is it. And I decide like this it's all gone. I I prayed for the first time, and I asked the universe to show me that I was valuable and that it had a plan for my life. I don't know what happened, but I had fallen asleep. And whether you want to say it was my body protecting me from the the threat of suicide that it knew that I was experiencing, or whether it was a divine encounter, I had a vision and a dream that changed my life absolutely forever. I fell asleep that night, and I'm in this giant room with this beautiful painting, and I don't understand what it is. And so there's this giant landscape painting with like this really deep burgundy color all over it. And there's just a sliver of light, and there's me at the bottom. And I'm so small and insignificant on this painting. It's almost funny. And I don't understand what it is. And I'm like, what is this? I didn't grow up in a spiritual family. We didn't have language for that. We didn't go to church. My parents, that just wasn't part of our life. And so I'm asking in my dream, I'm like, what is this painting? And this voice, this like just such a calming voice says, my son, you've planted your seeds in the wrong gardens, and it's time to wake up. So I woke up, and I was just like shaking, and I was crying, and I was happy because I knew that something out there cared. Because for this whole arc of my story, it was just the deepest isolation. And then to know that something or somebody saw me, like, absolutely saved my life.
That is an amazing story. I'm literally crying.
Yeah.
I thought that you grew up after our conversation before, I thought you grew up in a spiritual family. That is literally divine intervention. Wow.
Harrison, this is so powerful and so important for all in the audience, for all of us, like having these moments that are part of the human experience when you lose hope is a common human experience. Like we've been there, and there's different levels, and this is a deep level. And you were given such a gift with this dream, and I think we all get those gifts in different ways, these different, God winks, whatever people want to call them. I have this theory that there is a psychological phenomenon that right before trauma, it's called T-1. The trauma happens if it is a significant, an event, a traumatic event happens, and that's -1 second. We remember, we record what we're wearing, where we're standing, who we're with, what's happening, sights, smells, everything. I believe that there's also a transformation, which I call TR -1, where we remember when we have these significant moments of something big is happening. You can call it a near-death experience, which I'd call that for you. And this is not uncommon with people who have suicidality, who have these transformations that it feels like I got woken up. I had kind of a transformation. And you remember what you're wearing, where you were, different things in the environment. And that's what tells you that, whoa, this is a big one. So I love the vivid imagery that you shared about the dream with your really small hair. And there's this beautiful landscape. And there's, I think you said maroon, right? Maroon color. Yeah. And the words that you were shared with my son, you planted your seeds in the wrong garden. Amazing. So I won't get into too much with kind of giving you feedback on that, because I'm sure you have at some extent, but I'd love to actually. But that was the hope that you needed, right? To pull you to whatever the next was, which we don't know yet. But if you want to go ahead and continue from there, I'm just thrilled that you had this transformational moment. And what I say to people that are struggling with suicide is, if you can hang on, because I've heard this, if you can hang on, and if you can ask, like you did the right thing, you asked. And of course, the universe has your back and wants to help and wants to give you the signs and the hope, and you can call it universe, God, whatever anybody wants to call that. But it is there for us, I believe. So in the darkest moments, there's that sliver of light like you had in the painting. And that's the opportunity to pull through. So if you can take us through what happened next, that would be beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. I I didn't know what to do with that dream. It was so profound and so much I felt like I was touched by the hand of the universe, whether that's God or something else. It was a revelation, and it was too much for my 13-year-old brain. I think my emotions just spilled out of me like a broken vase. I was like I said, I was shaking, I was crying, I was laughing, I was smiling. Like I had goosebumps. And when I woke up, the most interesting piece was that I wasn't laying down, but I was sitting up. But I remember falling asleep laying down. I spent that whole summer into that school year like falling asleep gripping a pillow because I was just so afraid. And I thought about all of these existential things. And so it felt like everything that had happened up until this point was leading me here. And I just don't know. And so I went to school. Everyone knew me as like, I was the stark atheist. I did not believe in God. I did not believe in divine wisdom or power. Like, I, my dad's dad gave him a Bible and I actually stole it from him. And the only reason I had it was to like disprove this whole like divine thing. I felt like we were just specks of dust on a floating rock in the middle of space, and that this was all just a happy accident. So when I went to school, I started having conversations with the more spiritual students in my grade. And these were the same people who like had heard rumors like, I think Harrison, is he gay? Like, is like he's got groomed online or like what is happening? And he's also the atheist. Like we're like maybe a little bit even scared of him. So I had these conversations and they're like, you've got to come to this community group. Like you've got to come. And I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll come. And so I go and I just have this conversation with one of their spiritual leaders at this local church. It was called Restoration. And it was so healing. And I spent a journey into deep revelational community. I had this conversation at a small group. It was the first small group I ever went to. I'm at probably 14 now. And it was a co-ed small group. And this like 16-year-old boy, he stands up in the group and he tells them, this is in front of like 25 guys and girls. He's like, I'm addicted to porn. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no way he just said that. No way he just said that at 16 years old. And the group dynamic is like, some people are like, oh, that's weird. Like, that's gross. And some people are like, yeah, me too. And so we all like came together and I went after the group and I hugged this guy. I was like, I'm in the same place. Like, I don't have language for this yet, but like, I need help because I'm consuming porn at this point, 2 or 3, and on really bad days, especially on the weekend, it's like 4 times a day. And like, it's completely changing the way that I view women. I am completely objectifying women. I don't see a future for myself where I don't. And so when he makes this comment, he's like, yeah, I'm addicted to porn. We actually end up getting together. We go to a Panera and we just talk about it. Like it was the first time that I had a friend. Like he took me out. I remember his battery died in his car and we just sat in his car and talked about it. And it was so healing. Like just having somebody there to say, yeah, me too. I mean, it brought me so far.
This I cannot even tell you how happy this makes me because I've spoken at our big church here, Seacoast in South Carolina, and I've spoken to the parents, all of the youth pastors, all of the, anybody who deals with children knows how much of a problem pornography is. And there is a real denial. And to hear you say, which is exactly why Dr. Chez and I are doing this podcast, because I started a group at the College of Charleston called a Pizza Circle. And in the Pizza Circle, we talk about everything: sexual assaults, eating disorders,
Mm.
porn culture. And what I see is people heal. Young people heal. Oh, I also was sexually assaulted. Oh, I also had that experience. I drank too much. I blamed myself. I did it. And that's what you needed. You needed that so much. We need community to support us when we have these experiences so you can have the language, so you can contextualize, so you have another like brother in arms with you. It's so important. And I just hope that parents hear this. You have to give your child the space, whether that's in the home with you in a non-judgmental way, but hopefully finding a peer group that can help them to process.
Reducing the what those kind of things do, and it could be with a therapist too, but it's sometimes even more powerful when it's a peer. I'm a big fan of group therapy and group support, group whatever, because sometimes when it's a peer who has gone through the same thing, immediately that shame, isolation, and secrecy is in a different place. It may not be completely gone, but it is in a whole different place with, whoa, okay. And it's similar, like if somebody has cancer and they find out, oh my God, somebody has my same rare cancer. We search for that so that we feel like, okay, we can learn from each other and not feel in the dark. And this type thing is so in the dark for a long time, usually, that amen to that group and that boy who had the bravery to say that to this group is huge, and that all it takes is one person, and you might say, "This is a kid that saved my life." I don't know
Yeah.
that you would, but, I mean, you might say that, and I wanna say that to people too, that one person standing up to say Stephanie is very open book, and when she and I mean, I am too, but I'm trained as a therapist to not do that, which is I grapple with that, you know what I mean? But when we do that, when we share, I can't mention losing my brothers without crying. And it's just because it still pains me. I think it always will, it still does. But when we share our experience, which is so much more universal than we think, there is an ally in that. There usually is an ally because there's a heart that says, I get it. I see the pain. I've been there or I've had the same experience. So that is something for us to keep in mind. Shame, I know how Steph and I both feel about shame.
Yep.
Shame is so damaging to the
Yep.
psyche. And if that can be reduced through a group, call it pizza circle, call it a church group, call it a therapy group or whatever, we need more and more and more and more of those because we need ways to reduce shame if we're going to heal. You
Yep.
can't heal if you have secrets, shame, and fear and isolation. So anyway, this is a beautiful transition to where you're starting to come into where you are now. So what another healing moment. You've had these beautiful gifts along the way. I just want to call out that person, like, thank you. And then thank you for being like, okay, this is just what I needed. I'm going to take this opportunity. Cause that's step two. Like step one, and I'm not saying 12 steps, but step one is, oh my gosh, I hear this and I'm watching somebody else be brave. Can I follow in those steps and go make that step to say, hey, me too? And me too, I talk about, I write about because I get a little jaded with let's move beyond me too. But you're reminding me the power in me too.
Yep.
There is power in that. I want me too, plus I want hashtag no more. Like I want all of it, but there is power in that for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
So Harrison, where did it go from there? You find this person who is your ally, and then what?
Yeah. So I wasn't the only one who was affected by this cultural shift in this small group. I found out that, I guess, how do you say, authenticity and vulnerability was not a normal part of this group's culture.
Mhm.
And so this was a huge shift for everyone there. So I was really the first person to be like, hey, man, I love what you're saying. I need a hug right now. Like, let's hang out. Then another person joined the group, and then another person joined the group. And we're like, okay, now we're in a text group chat. What do we do? The most funny part of my story, my parents see that they're getting a $15 charge every month for something that says porn on it. And they're like, oh crap, my kid is buying porn. And then they realize that they're like, hey man, we need to talk to you. So money's tight, having this conversation, and they say, like, hey, you can't be using mom and like our card for porn. And I'm like, oh, this isn't for porn. Actually, this is a porn recovery program that I'm on right now. And they're like, what? Shout out to Brain Buddy. We were on Brain Buddy together, which is a porn recovery program, and we were part of a team. And so it was like an anonymous thing. So like, no one really knew who was who, but we all knew that we were there. And so it was like an open space for me to be like, hey, I relapsed today, or hey, like I need support today. There was an emergency notification, like all your boys saw that your message, like, oh, you know, I don't know, whoever needs help. And so that was where we went next. My parents were like, what in the world is my kid doing?
I've been so confused by you.
Right?
They were like, "This kid, that's amazing." I think it was a beautiful story. I love it. I love that they are like, "Okay, yeah, you can do this." But I think that is so I'm assuming that that's something along the lines of like Covenant Eyes or any one of those
Yeah, it's kind of like
accountability.
that.
It's like an
It was
account.
just way cheaper than Covenant Eyes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's cool. So now all of your buddies from church are now on this app, all of you together, and you have accountability. What an amazing step as a young man to do that.
Accountability and support. You
Mm,
just what you needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, authenticity, vulnerability, and the tools, hopefully. Does it teach you tools to, yeah, to kind
Yeah.
of shift to another, yeah, and to process your emotions and all those kind of things?
Yeah.
Great. Amazing.
So I want you to continue with your story. I have some questions regarding all of this, but is there more to the story?
Yeah. I mean, I think the beauty of healing and trauma and the journey of life is that the story's not over until it's over. And so I'm here in college. I'm in the state of Virginia, my home state, at JMU, James Madison University in the Shenandoah Valley. And I lead a vibrant life group here. So we call it core group. So it's a core group of guys. Most of us are apprentices of Jesus. Not everyone is. So it's an open space for people to just be like, hey, this is what I'm going through. Like, we've had multiple guys come into our group and they're like, I'm going through this and this and this. Like, I had one of the guys in my group come over to my house at like 11:30, just break down crying. Like, I'm struggling with porn really bad. And like, about to go to bed. I had drank my melatonin tea. Like, I'm in my PJs. And so just fostering this community of vulnerability and just compassion, like, hey, I see you. Like, you're a real person with real problems and you're human. And so like I think fostering that culture that I learned from my middle and high school group and taking that to college in a real transformational way, especially for people who aren't spiritual. They're
Mhm.
like, there's something here that is special that you're not finding in other places.
So what I love is this message is actually universal, right? Because there are so many people that may not be struggling with porn, or they probably are, they don't even know they're struggling with porn, but they're struggling with a lot of different things because it's that attachment to like, I think that spirituality, whether you are a follower of Buddha or Jesus or whatever, like everybody
Absolutely.
has their different spiritual path. Like, it's amazing to me actually that your parents raised you with nothing, you were like an atheist and now you're like a follower of Jesus, so it doesn't no matter what your path is, knowing that something is bigger than yourself is so important because the material world will never satisfy you. I don't care what it is, whether it's clothing or porn or
Yeah.
sex
Yeah.
or, food, nothing will satisfy you. And there's a part of it that needs that spiritual grounding. Whatever your spirituality is, that grounding. I love that you asked the universe. I'm big on telling my kids that because while I consider myself a spiritual Christian, I have a daughter who considered herself atheist and still does, but she's as life knocks you down, you start to realize that things of this world are very tenuous and you have to look for something more profound. And I think that's where she is too. It may not be Jesus, it may not be, but it's that understanding that there's something out there that's bigger, that's holding us, and that's important. And we need to take that in it. And you get there through authenticity and connection, something that is completely devoid of all of those phones and everything that our modern society is all about, So the only way you can get to where you are is by being real
Yeah.
and not holding back. every kid, I can't tell you how many kids I talk to that struggle with loneliness.
Yeah.
And it may not be as extreme as you in 7th grade, because a lot of kids are part of sports teams and things like that, and they have that kind of connection. But when they get to college, most kids through high school or college have gotten to a place where they feel lonely and isolated. And in some ways, you learned early, which was kind of a blessing in a way. Like, it was a horrible thing. But in some ways, you're now at a place where you're like, I know I have to be authentic and I have to reach out and I have to make connections in order to feel, like I'm in a happy space, because connections let us live longer, they keep us healthier, all of that kind of stuff. And you get there through, the way you did.
And
Yeah.
that's the dangerous part about pornography. And I mean, everything in the porn online world is it's so isolating, and it just makes you feel like I'm the only one going through this, or I'm the only one attracted to this, or I'm the only person who's feeling this way. And I can only imagine the effect that it has on women who feel the need to play this role. And so it's so, so, so isolating. And so whether that's, like you said, whether that's, you're a follower of Buddha, or you're in a therapy group, or you are, in a small group at a church or whatever, pizza group, pizza circle, like everyone needs a space where they can open up and they can put down the shield of like the faux them, and they can
Mhm.
just be somebody who's like actually human. And so just saying like, hey, I struggle with porn. Like, I have only found healing in the past 3 months with pornography. Like, I have battled porn for so long. I've been porn free for almost 3 months now. And this has been yeah, it's been a huge moment. Like, I had
Congrats.
a dumb phone. Like, I had basically a flip phone for a year and a half, and I still didn't find healing from porn. And so just to be a person to say, like, the only real way that I have found healing from this addiction is really what it was not through a dumb phone, was not through willpower. It was through healthy boundaries and vulnerability. Like, you need to be vulnerable, and you can't be vulnerable by yourself. Like, you need community.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is why the 12-step programs work, and this is why they've been around forever. The surrendering, and I'm just saying that in a broad term, the surrendering to say I have a problem is something that, then leads to the next of, okay, now I'm not alone anymore. And what do I do about it? And I love that you guys are calling it the Vibrant Life Group. Is it just guys or is it co-ed?
Yeah, so we have a whole community called Chi Alpha. So we're a Christian ministry here on our campus.
Okay.
But our life group is just guys. So we have
It's
girls
just,
and guys groups, and then we have like times where we get together. But yeah, so it's a really great space for guys just to be vulnerable.
yeah. And what I love about that name is that you're not calling it the porn recovery. Like, you're
Yeah.
not labeling it as one thing, because nothing is really one thing, even an alcoholic addict, whatever, of anything. To me, there's a lot of things. So I feel like calling it the let's vibrantly live. Like, how
Yeah.
beautiful is that? And let's support each other beyond this symptom, beyond this problem. Let's support each other to the bigger picture of a vibrant, loving, authentic life. So I love that. Do you have plans for this venture? Are you hoping that this will, I know Stephanie has visions, we have visions of ways to do this similar thing on campuses, and wondering, tell us about your career path and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've been very blessed in the past 6 months even to meet some really incredible people, and it was absolutely divine. I encountered this girl named Reagan. She is a part of Wired Human. She was our former class president here at JMU. And I encountered her at some like ADHD seminar. She heard I had a dumb phone. She's like, wow, that's really cool. We like message. Turns out we both love Jesus. And she connects me to this guy. She's like, you should totally talk to this person. His name is Jason Frost. He leads this international movement called Wired Human, and he leads the youth coalition. So I'm like, what is this about? How do I get involved? Is this guy crazy? I guess we'll find out. So I hop on a Zoom call. No, it was just a phone call. And I'm like, I've got 30 minutes to spare. So I talk to this guy, and I'm totally ready to say, like, this guy's crazy. I don't want to do this. And he's like, Harrison, I heard that you have a dumb phone. I heard that you're very like open to tech boundaries. And that's all he had heard. And he's like, I'm feeling very led to tell you that there's like this opportunity in California, and I think you should go. So we went to Apple headquarters in Cupertino, California to protest during the Worldwide Developers Conference. We were protesting Apple's lack of safety features, specifically at this time for hash matching. It's like an AI technology to be able to detect previously reported child sexual abuse material, CSAM, or formerly child pornography. And Apple's just complete lack of safeguards. So I was able to share my story about how my groomer and my abuser, he moved me from the Xbox platform to the iMessage platform, where they had reporting features. This one didn't. And so we were calling to action. Through this group, I was able to join the End OSIAC Survivors Council, part of their 40 group coalition. And our goal is to end online sexual exploitation and abuse of children worldwide.
Just say that one more time, because that's the name of the organization. And how can people find but all of these
Yeah.
organizations actually?
Yeah, you can look up Wired Human online and the End OSIAC Coalition. And like,
END.
yeah, END. So like to see something,
Yeah.
and then OSEAC. It has been such a
.org, I'm
pleasure
assuming.
to join this group. And Wired Human is very similar to the structure of these like pizza groups or the small groups, where we aim to get ourselves into college campuses and have conversations like this. Or in high schools, we have seen the lack of richness in sex education and in conversations. And so we want to be able to partner with parents and having healthy conversations with kids. We're actually going to a Nashville university here very shortly to, have a conference about this. So it's gonna be super exciting.
I think this is important because you come from a background that's not a Christian home. And I think that that's kind of important in some ways, because I think when you come from a Christian home, there's a lot more shame around sexuality and and your sexual curiosities and all of those kind of things. I also think, because you're talking about sex education, so we're probably a lot on the same page, because even though I grew up Catholic, I very much have a more moderate view of how sex education has to happen. I know by the time kids graduate from college, 97% have had sex.
Yeah.
So when are you going to have these very important conversations with kids if it's not in high school? So why parents refuse to have like this very rich,
Yep.
deep, comprehensive conversations with kids when they are in their home, when they can see them in their first relationships, is something that I sort of hope parents pick up from these conversations. Because I don't know how you feel. Like, do you think if your parents had had more intentional conversations with you about, you know, sex or your sexual development, or, opened the door for that, would that have maybe helped you when this predator was talking to you online, when he sent you, graphic videos and things like that?
Yeah, I think it's really important to acknowledge that like we have a completely new age of parenting happening right now. And so my parents, they did everything they knew how with the tools that they had. My parents were like, don't speak unless you're spoken to, you just do your own thing, play outside until the lights turn on. Like, so like that was just not our age. And so when all this was developing, I'm sure my parents were at such overwhelm. And I can only imagine how parents are feeling right now with just the flood of the digital information system, the flood of, you know, just decision fatigue of what do you even talk about with your kids anymore? Like, you got to talk about porn, you got to talk about rape culture, you got to talk about alcohol, you have to talk about drugs, what is good, what isn't, what is safe and what's not. You have to talk about getting behind the wheel and meeting strangers. There's just 1,000 things that parents could have never imagined would all be out trying to harm their kids. So like I think the biggest tool for families, and that really helped families like mine, is although we weren't vulnerable with each other at first, we slowly have created a culture in my house, and we just got away for the weekend. We had a lot of publicity with Good Morning America sharing my story, and it was very hard on my family. It was very re-traumatizing to be able to publicly share and for so many of my parents' peers and their communities and even workspaces to know that their son was abused online. So we got away and we were just spilled out like, this is what I'm experiencing. This is how I'm feeling. We talked about, my own partner and how we view sex and like what that means for us and just the beauty of intimacy. So just detabooing conversations with your kids, destigmatizing, because you can't leave sex education up to governments. We just can't do that. That's not safe. Like we can't let them decide when they're ready.
Amen.
True. Oh
Amen.
my God. Steph and I are both like, everything you say is just so amazing. Here's the issue, Harrison, that you point out so skillfully. And Steph and I talk about, oh my gosh, like we're super educated in this area, but we cannot possibly prevent our kids from everything that's out there because of
Absolutely.
just what you said. There is so much, like so much that we can't all research and become sex educators and mental health educators
Yeah.
and suicide prevention experts and drug prevention experts.
Right? You can only
And
do so many things.
we can only do so many things. So what you're saying is my magic solution that I say to parents
Amen.
every day is spend the time not talking. Actually, don't be the teacher yet. There is a goal, a role in you providing your expertise at a point. But first, a very first step, and I don't want to give anything away about the book, but I'm just saying a very first step is we need the vulnerability together as team Haynes, Team Leeby, Team Boye. Like we are a unit, and let's spend the time and the effort together. 7 minutes a day, anything, any amount of minutes a day. We don't even get that. Like you said, you were in a room off. That is majority of America. The kids are off on their own. If it's not in a room, they're somewhere else. They're at, after school care or somewhere else doing that. So I think that this solution to reprieve parents from having to think that they have to learn everything that's out there, start with exactly what you're saying. Do a getaway where you're vulnerable and you talk about your sexual experiences as a parent, not in a gross, weird way, but to say, this is what love means to
Yeah.
me. Sex is a gift that it's procreation and it's love and it's pleasure. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with love, procreation. What a miracle, right?
Yeah.
But we're so scared to go there. And so spending the time and the vulnerability, and I forget what you called it, your getaway. What'd you call it?
We went to, because it was so challenging this past week with all the publications and folks reaching out. We like found like a tiny house on the Airbnb page, and
But you had a name for your like family retreat thing.
oh
Like
gosh, I don't even know.
you just said it a
It was
second ago.
definitely a Sabbath for all of us though.
Okay, great. So let's call it a Sabbath. What a healing Sabbath to be like, let's get real with our feelings together. This
Yeah.
doesn't happen in America. I'm telling you, we
Oh,
don't do that. We don't do that. We need to, like, please, people, that's what we need to do. So, amen for you guys doing what you're doing. Your family is amazing and great things
Love my parents.
are in the works for you.
Well, the fact
Okay.
that you said I mean, I have to point out the amazing thing is you were the catalyst for all of this. You were the catalyst for the vulnerability that parents think that they can. And I've actually had several of my students say, after they've been in my class, they've been like, I started having the conversations with my parents because the truth of the matter is our generation, like you're saying, we didn't learn. No one ever talked to us about sex.
Yep.
So having these conversations feels awkward. And, Dr. Chez makes me tell this story often. I'll sometimes go up to my kids and I'll be like, I just want you to know that you're not supposed to choke your partner. Like
Right?
everybody had sex up until 2011 without
Yeah.
choking their partner. That would be something very extreme. And my kids are like, okay. I'm like, Dad and I have had a very satisfying sex
Yeah.
life until now. I know you don't need to know that, but we've never choked each other, but
Yeah.
what's weird is sometimes you need that bizarre, like breakthrough to just say that. Like, I mean, I've talked to my kids about everything, but like, that was like something I was like, how do I even tell my kids this is
Yeah.
weird? And I was like, I have to be honest. I have to say, I've never experienced this. My friends have never been choked by their spouses. why are we now choking people? Why are we now doing things that are degrading to women? Like, why are women okay with that? I was just writing about this book that was given to it's like made to look like it's a young adult book. And the main lead girl is about to have sex with this guy, and she says, "Fuck me like you hate me."
Yeah. Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
Why are young girls reading about sex where they're saying to their partner, young, "Fuck me like you hate." I wouldn't even do that as a 55-year-old. I don't think
Yeah.
that's necessary.
Yeah.
Why are we conditioning young people to make hate to each other?
Yeah.
Why are we doing that?
Wow, that's really profound. I was thinking about this morning, just like preparing for our time together, and my English professor, she's incredible, and we were talking about like this is how you write like your own work. This is how you make something that's profound and that's special to you. She said, I highly recommend that you guys don't use generative AI to write your papers. And like even just to like brainstorm ideas. And this is coming full circle, promise. Like
Yeah.
if you write a paper or an essay or a work or a book or something using all this content, you're letting the internet, you're letting all of this stuff create a foundation for you. And if we're saying that that's wrong for writing, literature, for creativity, how is sex different? We're looking at the internet, we're looking at pornography as a foundation for healthy sex, and we're seeing, you know, partners choking each other and hating each other and calling each other names that are degrading. And then there's this like I don't even remember what the statistic was. It was like over half of women have experienced like anal sex, and only a few percent like have said that they enjoyed it.
Oh,
And
that was
so
in my TED Talk too.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
What was it, 55% or
yeah,
something?
yeah, and 2% said they enjoyed it. What
Yeah.
is
And
that
how is
about?
like where is this standard? And so how are we indoctrinating the future generation of marriages, and we're allowing a capitalistic interest to completely override people's sense of agency in making sexual decisions and just exploring with their spouse or with their partner.
Yeah, okay, okay. I need to say this right now because my background before I started writing this book with Dr. Chez was I was taking comprehensive sex ed and abstinence only sex ed, and I was comparing the curriculums and the learning objectives of each, right? And what you said is absolutely 100% correct. You said, why are we letting the government, teach our kids? This is something that we should be having. And here's the thing is the government is more likely to go toward comprehensive sex ed. And while I'm not saying this in any prudish kind of way. There's real beauty in some of the objectives of the abstinence
Yeah.
only, and that is in making someone look at their humanity. And this is what is missing. And the comprehensive sex ed, they often say there's nothing wrong with pornography. There's definitely something wrong with pornography. And it all goes back to the same thing that you were just saying. I say to my kids, and this may be too much. I hope my mother doesn't listen to this, but I say, you should not have an idea of what sex or your partner is. You need to explore that body
Hmm.
on your own. You need
Yeah.
to explore your own body. Like they need to explore you. You need to explore them. Like doing things because pornography told you is like
Yeah.
so unhealthy.
Absolutely.
No one in our generation, again, going back, no one in our generation learned that way. We learned by making mistakes, by
Yeah.
doing things that, oh, that hurt my partner. Okay, never doing that again, or, oh, that felt good. I'm going to do that. I don't care whether this is in marriage, because a lot of people don't have sex until marriage, and then they watch porn up until they get married and they think, oh, I'm going to do all the things in porn because I saved myself till marriage. I don't care when you have sex. You have a partner who's a living, breathing human being, and you need to know that that person is an individual with individual likes. Their body doesn't respond the same way as anyone else, and porn is a lie. So just take the
Porn is a
time
lot.
to explore that individual.
Yeah.
What makes them happy? What makes you happy?
Mhm.
And the hardest part, and this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you, is because porn does condition and it does set a template in your brain. So I'm sure there are things that you struggle with today. And I think it's important maybe to talk about that there's a template created in your brain based on porn that takes a long time to rewire and
Yeah.
to readjust and to say, hold on, that isn't healthy. I know it's what aroused me. I know it's what I experienced arousal and probably orgasm to, but
Yeah.
it isn't healthy. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. My partner and I have agreed that we definitely want to wait until we are married. There's something beautiful about that for us, and that is just an us step. That is not a prescription. We have realized that there's a lot of freedom, especially right now that we're long distance. It's been very hard. And I think it just like it really highlights how much platforms and media have influenced sex education, people's sex lives, the progression of what sex looks like. And I hear so many people talk about, especially through pornography, like there's the exposure of like, like you send your nudes, like there's like the dick pic, and that's how it starts. And
Mhm.
so I think it's been really healing for me, especially to spend the past 3 months. There's been zero pornography, and that's been really, really healing. And I'm super proud of myself, and I'm not gonna stop flexing that. But like it's given me a lot of space over the past 3 years that I've been with her to be able to heal and to unlearn the lies that porn has taught me, that like choking is normal, that hitting is normal, that, you know, that anything outside of what she says is okay is okay. Like, because if someone wanted to do something to me that was going to cause me pain, and some dark force had said that that was okay, I would be upset. And so it's been able to give me the space to heal and like learn. And so now that I'm not consuming pornography, now that I'm not envisioning like this is what it'll look like, or this is what it'll feel like, or this is going to be my experience, rather than living in the future moment of like this is what it's going to feel like when I this, or this is going to feel like when I this, or I do this to her. Rather than doing that, you're like, oh, I want to exist in the moment, exist in my body, be a whole human person, and just like be me.
Embodied, embodied,
Yep.
two embodied human beings
Yep.
responding to the other body
Yeah.
and their own, mutually desirable. Like, I think that is so profound that you do things to her that she wants done to her.
Yeah.
And in the context of a loving relationship. So it's not just the pleasure and the act, but it's in the context of love, trust, all those other things that you have built. And I want to say something about unlearning. In my field, we can't unlearn something. We can evolve past,
Yep.
but we can't unlearn it's there. But once we have the awareness and the commitment to change, we can evolve past that, and you can rewire your brain. I believe 100% in neuroplasticity. I mean, that's proven, but anyway, you can rewire the brain in terms of your arousal responses and things, especially when you're doing what you're doing, especially when you're present. Because with pornography and all the other things, that was an escape. That was not a present necessarily. There was curiosity and all kinds of things that may have
Yeah. It
piqued
wasn't
present,
grounding.
but it wasn't grounded. It wasn't embodied, as Steph is saying. It was to escape emotion, versus what you're talking about when you're with your partner, that you want to be fully present. You want to be fully there, mind, heart, soul, body, fully all there, and give love. Like you're giving love, not a sexual act.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the case. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I'm
It's
just
not
saying
performative. There's
it's
no
not performative.
expectation.
Yeah.
It's like, especially, and I want to just like touch base with this. There's a lot more about pornography that is a lie, whether that is the male feeling of inadequacy, like, oh, I don't have the muscles like that, or like,
The
oh,
penis like that or
yeah,
the
I don't have a penis like that. You don't have a torpedo under your belt, and you're like, oh, I'm not masculine enough. I'm not worthy of this. And so many men are like, they're feeling self-conscious. And then the opposite end, women are like, and because the ideal body type has changed like 5 times in the past 10 years, between like the heroin chic, like you're really thin, to now it's like, oh, maybe a little bit curvier. And then you have to have the exact proportions. And so that's not my partner. And that's not me. We're normal human beings. And I think realizing you're like, I don't have to be an actor to be a good partner. And
right.
for my case, when I'm a husband, like I don't need to be a porn star to be a great husband. Like I just need to be a good husband. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right, right.
Harrison, I know you have a hard stop. I just want to ask you, is there anything that are there any tips you can give, or what was your toolbox, or what would you say? Like, if there's a young man out there in your same position, a young woman, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I would say vulnerability and community are some of the deepest practices that anybody, regardless of cultural background or heritage, like these things are so necessary. You don't see healing happen in a one-on-one setting, or not one-on-one, just by yourself, but like in a one-on-one setting, like me and that guy at Panera in that car when his battery died and we sat there because we could not leave. Like I felt like that was a divine moment. And so if you can find spaces to be honest, to open yourself up in front of somebody else, they will almost always meet you there. They like will put everything out on the table. And so I think vulnerability is so important. Community is so important in grounding practices that are valuable to you, whether that's going outside or not sleeping in your room with your phone in there at night. Just like just doing things like this that you know are good for you, that you know you need.
Meditation, prayer.
Walking outside with your shoes off, maybe like eating fruit. Like, I don't know. It's just like we have an apple tree in my backyard. I live
Mm.
against a college campus and I've been here for 2 years. That tree didn't fruit last year. And so this year we walked outside and we were like, this is so beautiful. Let me just enjoy this. And you eat like the nasty apple from the tree and you're like, wow, I feel human right now. And so we just get sucked into this digital age where we're consumed by the screen and we're not present to our bodies, we're not present to who we are, our relationships. Like just being with somebody else, you can't beat that. You can't get that from a screen. You can't get that from porn. You can't get that from the experience.
Your
This
parents have to be so
Like,
proud of you.
like to think
If
so.
I were your parent, I would be very proud of you.
They tell me.
Remind me of my own children where I go like, I just love you for your profound and, you know, your desire to be authentic. I love that.
Thank you.
so beautiful. Thank you so much for this two-part, interview. This has been really, really helpful. And just what you said, it was through community, through all of us sharing and allowing of vulnerability. So thank you so much for your courage.
Well, thanks for
Thank
giving
you,
me the
Harrison. I'm
opportunity.
excited. We will put all of your information below, but I
Cool.
really can't wait to see what you do with your life because you're on such an amazing path. Your parents, like I said, should be very proud. You should be very proud.
Thank you guys. Do you
Yeah.
guys need any other information from me until I hear you next? Like I have a few more minutes if you need like a bio or if you need like a photo or whatever.
You can send us any of that would be awesome. I guess the one thing if you want to would be I would just say I wrote down some red flags and I'd like to even just share the red flags with the audience because I think you might add some to it.
Okay.
And I think these are really important for people. For me, hearing your story, I would say the fact that the relationship was a secret, that there was
Yeah.
a secret and while he didn't ask you to keep it secret, he gave you something and I want parents to understand they'll give you something that a child automatically knows if they have pornography or something like that, it's going to induce silence
Yeah.
in them. The age differential, like, maybe if your parents had said it at that night at dinner when your phone was dinging, oh, who's that? Oh, tell us about like, and I think parents need to have like open, non-excited responses when their child says they're 12 and they say, oh, this is my friend, he's 19, I met him online. This is a red flag to parents, right? Like if they can ask it in the right way. I understand also why it would be scary too. Moving your talk from one platform to another is
Major
another
red flag,
huge, huge red flag.
especially to
Uh,
iMessage.
yes. Yes. And I say this in the book too, that parents think that like even Roblox is like something really simple, but when anyone can access, when you have those the ability to talk to anyone on even the most childish gaming platforms, they can be reached by pedophiles or
Yeah.
predators and asked to move to other platforms. Exposing things that you had to keep secret, self-harm, it created a kind of a trust and a fear in you. Like it's almost like a Stockholm syndrome,
Yeah,
I would say,
that's exactly how I would describe it.
Yeah. the increase, this is another thing, is that increase of frequency of this friend needing you is a red flag, threatening to kill themselves. We have heard with several of the people that we talk to, and I just want to put this out there because this is in relationships too. When you are the one person's only one person, you're my one person, you're the
Yep.
one person that can save me. That is a red flag. That is a huge red flag to me.
Yep.
You should not be saving someone. You should not be their only person. If they're glomming onto you, I need you, you can save me, blah, blah. And for sure, even hearing you say that he showed you these self-harm things, and then he asked you, the only way he was going to stop was to show you himself
Yep.
naked. What
Yep.
the hell?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm gonna stop there.
Yeah.
What would you say? Anything else?
I think it just, all of this digital age of hurry, of consumerism, of constant connection is really harmful to just people in general. There are so many parents who just like, I'm going to take the screens from my kids or whatever. And like, sure, that can be helpful. But just educating your kids like, hey, I don't really know about this, and having the agency as a parent to create a space where you're like, I don't know what's on Roblox. Will you teach me? Or I don't know what kind of experiences you could have on Xbox. Do you think it's safe? Sure, you can do your own research, but like just having a conversation with a kid and giving them the agency to be in charge for just a moment and to have that conversation and let them lead you, because you can read a parenting article, you can read an incredible, well-written book, but like nothing is going to teach you how to raise your kid better than the needs of your child. So just listening.
What an amazing advice. Amazing advice.
100%. You are so confirming our path and our mission just by your experience, which is so helpful. Because sometimes it can feel kind of Pollyanna, like, really? Just that? Because people want a concrete, tangible,
Yeah.
give me the tangible,
Even a
like
program.
give me the program that I could put on every computer and then they're never going to do this. And it's not that. We can't meet the problem with the solution with the level of the problem. We have to go deeper and better and, get to the root of the way to address this. And that's what you're talking about.
But I
Absolutely.
love that you're saying not even just have conversations, which we would give, but you're saying let your child lead the conversation. I think that we need to like
Zip
say that
it.
1,000 times.
Yeah.
Lead the conversation. How do you think? Because it at least allows them to, you know, like you listen to my TED Talk saying, what do you think? What do you think about these porn stars? That was the thing that got my
Yeah,
son.
Sufi, right?
It broke that I'm going to teach you about porn. It's bad. Instead, I said, what do you think happens in the lives of these girls? And just that giving him the place to ponder, think, and kind of share opened up a dialogue.
Absolutely.
This is just wonderful, wonderful advice. I would say as a red flag too, to add to all of that, when kids or people start to have that incongruence within yourself, like almost a sick to your stomach, like things don't feel right. And it starts early. I hear that. I know that it starts early of this just doesn't feel right. And so that's a big red flag. Your body tells you, like, I don't feel right. I feel nauseous, or I feel a headache, or I feel something. Your body knows sometimes before your mind and emotions catch up to that. And so paying attention to those signals within is a red flag. And listening and then finding an outlet to share them. That's what's missing in the world, is an outlet to share. And sometimes I'll call it your 911 person. Whoever can be your 911 person, it might be the different 911 person for different things, not real 911, but I'm just
Yeah.
like, who can be
Your
the
emergency
911
person.
person? Yeah, and it may not be a parent, and that's okay too, as long as there is somebody that agrees to be there for those kind of things, those kind of moments, because we all have them.
Yeah, that's really affirming because it's so essential. Like I said before, the vulnerability in community. And if you
Mhm.
can create a parenthood and a relationship with your child where you can be one of those outlets for community, not the
Uh-huh.
only one, not exclusively, you're not gatekeeping community, but you are saying like, hey, I'm a safe person. Like,
Right.
I'm a parent. This is my first time parenting. Like, I'm not a parent. I can't give a parenting advice, but I can tell you the perspective as a kid who was groomed. Like, I did not know that my parents were people until I was like 18 years old. Like, you just don't think about it like that. And it's
Yeah.
everybody's first time living. So if you can just let your kids know, like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. This is sketching me out. Like, will you teach me about this? Because I just want to know. And just giving kids, like I said, the agency to lead the conversation, at least a little bit. It doesn't feel like a lecture. It feels like a dialogue.
Oh, Harrison, I just love you for saying that. That is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I
Pleasure.
hope you have an amazing day, Harrison. You have literally illuminated this problem and given such great advice to people, and we are eternally grateful to you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Awesome. Take care, Harrison.
All right. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
This is our wrap up. There's a lot probably that both Stephanie and I are processing with this whole story, and what a guest. I mean, Harrison, I want to know you. I want to continue to know you and know what you're doing and follow your path because it's just amazing. What's important for parents and listeners to know are several things that stuck out to me. One is this concept of what his he called him Adam, what Adam did, and he was a sexual predator, but he crossed the line too in terms of this emotional dependence and complete codependence on, again, a sixth grader. Like, we cannot forget that it doesn't matter what age, but that age and stage of development that Harrison was at, the magnitude and enormity of that life-saving process that he was put in adds so much to this whole trauma. So I want to say that. I want to say the warning signs of codependence are what people need to really look out for. And when you're put in a position where you feel like, oh my God, I think I'm this person's lifeline. I think I'm their only friend. I think I'm their saving hope. That is a huge red flag. And what we do, Harrison said a couple times, I didn't know what to do with this. I didn't know where to process it, but I didn't know what to do with it. I want to tell people what you do with it is direct them to 988, like direct them to the professionals. 988 is the crisis and suicide hotline that's available. You can text, you can call at all times a day, and to share it with someone. It doesn't matter if it can't be your parent, some adult that you trust, because we can't be a lifeline for anybody. I, as a therapist, can't be a lifeline, and I'm trained, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is the lack of boundaries. When he kept saying how, he's texting me at dinner and after school and during school and all these things, those lack of boundaries, huge red flag. If I had to guess about Adam, and I'm not in a position to diagnose this person, but I would say that he might have borderline personality disorder. So that is a very pervasive, difficult disorder. It's one of the most difficult to treat, actually. And so I just want to say that if a person like that is giving you these red flags, it could be that they're dealing with severe, and they usually are, severe mental health issues that are way outside your scope, especially again as a sixth grader. What I loved is his dream. This is what I want to end with. That dream and that transformational moment was so rich and so vivid for him and so important. And even the words that he went to a church called Restoration was like, so I want to give people that hope that when you ask the questions to the universe, like, hey, please help me, to your angels, guides, your live and in person and otherwise, we do get answers. So I want to give people that hope too. And Harrison's a testament to the courage to ask, the courage to listen, courage to heal, and the courage to move forward. One more quick thing too. When parents catch, I'm going to say catch these kind of things, if they take everything away, and I hear this a lot from parents, kids get in trouble, so they take away a car, phone, all privileges, everything. that leaves kids even more lonely. So please think about your consequences. And if you're going to take away all connection, make sure that you are being the connector and not just leaving them alone in their room to even go down a further rabbit hole of depression. Make sure you're bringing in the connection of therapy, the connection of yourselves as parents, the connection of anybody that can help them if you're going to take away these other, kind of things that kids are so attached to. Okay, so that's a lot, but I passed the torch, Steph.
Well, I think that's really interesting that you say that because that actually feeds right into what I was going to say. And in the beginning, I talked about how my daughter really struggled with isolation, depression, bullying, all of the things that Harrison had. And, I felt for years, and it's funny because just this morning I was thinking it was 7 years, 6.5, 7 years that she went through this. And it was so hard. And I felt like I was constantly on watch and that I needed to be her support system and like the replacement for friends. I mean, sleepless nights. And when I said it impacts the whole family, it does. So I don't know where Harrison's parents were in this whole story. I imagine that they felt a lot the way that my husband and I and my children felt. We all felt the hurt for my daughter. So I don't know that our solutions were right, but I'm a mom and I can tell other moms out there and dads what we did. One is, like I started to say, I tried to be there for my child as much as possible. And I know that that's a luxury because I am a mom who works from home, but I wanted to fill the spaces that were empty from friends. I was trying to, hey, let's go here. And sometimes that's hard because your kid wants to do things that you're like, I have no interest in that. But it's like you gotta go to the Barbie movie. You gotta go to do the things that you wanna do or that you don't wanna do. Go my daughter loved, you know, some very interesting kind of gothy kind of things, and so we would go to goth shows and things like that. But I would try to fill her weekends with things that we did together because I think it's important to create some fun in those spaces where friends are missing. The second thing is I tried to not take personally any of her anger because I know when your child is struggling, it's easy to push them away because they're going to take it out on you. You're the one person who's not leaving, you're the person who's there. So I tried to not take personally the things that she would say to me or when she would be angry. And going to what Dr. Chez said, the third thing we did is we got her in therapy. And the therapy was so helpful because it just gave her a space to contextualize what was happening and have an outsider perspective. Of course, your family's going to be like, we love you, they're jerks, and blah, 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 blah. But it helped her to contextualize what was happening. An outsider perspective is really good, whether that is a friend or therapy. Some people can't afford therapy, but maybe it's a grandparent or whatever. My daughter said something recently that I thought was so cute. She spent a lot of time with her grandparents. And I said, your grandma misses you, whatever. I said, you're keeping her young. And she said to me, she's keeping me old. And what I loved about that was her grandmother taught her things that were of the 1950s and the 1960s. And she really loved learning about all of that stuff. So it was a connection that was formed because she didn't have a lot of other people to hang out with. And that was really valuable. She's on the other side of it today. She's amazing human being, but she has a real old soul and she really connected to her grandparents. So anyway, it doesn't have to be a therapist. It could be a grandparent who's very loving and supportive. And then the other thing is try to put them in activities outside of school. I know it's weird. When you get to middle school, there's not a lot of things that kids haven't been doing their whole lives. So it's like not easy to get into soccer, but like maybe it's an art class. These weren't terribly effective for us, but sewing classes were kind of helpful and things like that. And then the last thing I would say is if they're old enough, if they're able to get a job, for me and for my kids, all of them, a job has been such an amazing gift because they are getting people of all different ages working with them. And it's been a lifeline. It truly has been a lifeline. So, Dr. Shez, I'll let you reply to that, but then I'm going to just give a couple more comments on what you had said.
Yeah, I think that, finding those people in your life, like you said, her grandmother, finding those people in your life that are support people with something this sensitive and vulnerable, it's not easy it's not that a grandmother that's that they're going to disclose to, and even suicide they're not going to disclose to, but at least it's giving that connection, and that connection is key. So I still feel like, when there is this kind of situation and when you see these signs of your kid really isolating or really seeming preoccupied and down and not interested in activities, all the signs of depression, that's when it is worth the money, whatever it takes. Like, this is life-giving.
Oh, I absolutely 100% agree. There is
Yeah,
no replacement for therapy. I'm
yeah,
saying, and I think we're on the same page, that if you can't afford it, which I think there's better help online,
correct.
there's online sources, even watching therapy videos, and being able, or reading a book, like having a parent who can, talk to your child and try to help them process through what they went through, or what they're feeling, is very helpful. But I will say, and Dr. Chez and I say this a lot in our book that's upcoming, you really have to leave your judgments aside for what your child will tell you. At this point, one therapist said to me, and I loved, loved, loved it, you have to look at this as emotional first aid. This is emotional first aid. You are not there to teach lessons right now. You are literally there to give first aid, to be a big hug, an emotional hug, an emotional, like, first aid. So if you can keep that in forefront in your mind, don't worry about the other things. You can teach them lessons once they're in a healthy place.
Exactly. Yeah. Great imagery. It is first aid. And what you do when somebody's injured is you get them to the right professionals. So this is an emotional, heart injury. So you do get them to the professionals. And we're not it. Like, even though I'm trained, I could not treat my children for depression. That's not going to work. So calling in the right professionals at that point when you see these signs is really important.
Mhm. I also want to just, call out to Harrison, his great advice that maybe, you know, do we even give technology to kids? I mean, when you think about it, and I'm saying this again from my mama soul that was so hurt when my child was bullied, and I wanted her to have these connections with people, and I worried these connections online, if I take away the device, this is where she's finding some sense of community. I really struggled with, do I take the phone away? Do I, what do I, and I think your advice is right. Like, you can take it away, but you really need to fill that void. And I actually applaud Harrison's parents for taking it away. I mean, they were in a crisis moment. But when you think about this, and Harrison's so smart, right? Like, we would never take our child who's struggling and drop them into the middle of, like, Times Square and be like, well, whoever you find, it's connection, and essentially that's what you get online. There's so many stories of kids over and over again, who have been bullied online, who've been, the victim of predators, who have, gone down paths that don't even connect with who they truly are, but because they don't have connections, they do feel like, oh, I'm going to follow this person. They kind of look up to the person who befriended them online. So whatever that person's morals and ethics and ideals are, start to influence your own child. I saw this again with my daughter. She met some kids online that were going to her new school. They were very bad kids. They were very not good kids for her. They were very not in alignment with the human being that she was. And I thought, oh, this is great. New school, met the kids online, blah, blah, blah. My fault, my fault for not, for just assuming that they were good. So I really think there's a lot of dangers that come from online, even when it's that close of a connection, somebody who will be in class with them down the road. In the end of the day, it goes back to our, like, where we used to be, that you knew the parents, that is going to tell you a lot about the kid.
Yeah. I think also when we use the word grooming, it's really important for people to understand what that process is. And it happens with sexual abuse, that it starts out very benign, very friendship oriented, that you might not know, that your radar is not, peaked in any way, that you're just like, okay, yeah, this guy's cool. And it happens slowly over time. And again, I do think our body knows before our brain knows or our emotions know. But if you start to tune into when this is starting to feel weird or this is starting to feel something, that's when, your radar, trust that. Trust that inner knowing, because we do have those feelings. I think we've got antennas that are invisible, that we do know when things don't feel right. And then it gets down a really hard road where there's extortion and all kinds of things that then it's a fear-based, I've got to stick with this person either to save their life or because of fear of extortion and threats and all kinds of stuff. I think saying that too of how this process works is important for people to know.
Don't you think also, I think that parents need to be explicit when they say a couple of things to their kids. One, trust your inner gut. Like you literally have to repeat that message over and over and over again to your kids. Trust your gut. Never worry. You can tell me anything. I promise I will not I will not be angry at you when you share that with me, because people online are trying to get them to keep secrets. So you have to reiterate, trust your gut. Tell me anything. I'm not going to be upset. This is not about you. This is somebody else. I know who you are. I know your character. You're a great kid, blah, blah, blah. And people online are, you should not trust them, but make sure if they're telling you to keep a secret, we have to reiterate that to our kids. And the other thing, specifically to Harrison's story, is as far as a lifeline goes, parents need to tell their kids, you are never anyone's lifeline. I know you said that you could not be the lifeline to, anyone in your practice, but we have to tell our children because they don't know that they can't be a lifeline. Poor Harrison was holding this in his heart. What a sweet person that he just was trying to hold this person up, not knowing at 12 and 13 that you can't do that. So I think that's really important because, and that also obviously goes to someone clinging on to you. You are their, they're codependent to you and whatever you're going to do. But that specific thing is like if somebody is holding on to you or saying you're my only person, you're the only person I can trust, blah, blah. These are warning signs that kids need to be told about.
No, that's so important. I also love how Harrison's parents, I love the transformation that their family is going through, and like, amen and kudos to you guys, Harrison and his family, because after all this media attention, Good Morning America, and really sharing very openly and candidly what happened to him, they went away. I just have this vision that like they were in the mountains, away from their phones, and just really connecting together and getting real and crying. Like the emotion that Harrison held in until that dream night when the floodgates opened through that tiny sliver of the dream, he was finally able to emote all this stuff that I'm sure he was holding in. And that does such a number on the psyche. So I love that his family has these moments, and I encourage families to continue that. And as Steph said, I'm writing in the book about like a number one rule for families is please drop the judgment. Just say to yourselves, I'm not going to judge. I'm going to see them where they are and I'm going to meet that, because our knee jerk reaction, which is the wrong reaction, and I'm guilty of it, I'm sure Steph maybe is, but our knee jerk reaction is like, what? What? You got online with what? That's our knee jerk. And we have to stop that. We have to just say, manage ourselves first and be like, okay, we have this issue we're dealing with. Let's deal with it. Let's figure it out. I love you. I'm here for you. Kids need that. And I don't think that happens because we're in a society of complete reactionary everything. We're not responding, we're reacting constantly, and we judge constantly because we think our kids should be something or should do something. And we've got to stop that. We've got to really pay attention to that.
Can I give this is my last bit of parenting advice. This actually was what my dad used to do so brilliantly. He used to build me up, not with like tons of things that he would say, but he'd be like, I know that you're smarter than that, or you're so creative. Like he would say something that was more than like, I love you. It was more like about my character and how you have such a good moral compass. And it was I have no idea whether it was true, whether he actually saw that or not, but he made sure to let me know more than just he loved me, but that he knew I was smarter than choices I was making, or that he knew that, ultimately I had, I would be able to direct myself in a good way, that was in alignment with the character of who I was. So I think that saying that to kids, especially like Harrison, who maybe was knocked down by his peers. I've had kids who are bullied, more than one. But when you're knocked down by your peers, you really don't see your value. And love is one thing, but who you are and the value of who you are is another thing. And that alone can turn you from making a bad decision into making a good decision, or making a life-threatening decision to making one that will sustain your life. So that's just my last bit of advice.
100%. I want to say I see and value you. And Harrison, we see and value you. Like, you are such a value to the world. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this interview. Just amazing.
One last thing I want to say about what Harrison said, and this is truly my last thought. And I have said it, thank you, Harrison. I have said this literally to both of my children who are in school environments that aren't necessarily in alignment with who they are. And I said, okay, I tell them the whole story. I told them your whole story because it's not out on a podcast yet. So I told them your whole story. And I told them my favorite line that you said. I think you said, my son, you're planting your seeds in the wrong garden. Oh my God, is that powerful? That is so powerful. That is such a powerful thought for anyone. Literally, your garden cannot grow when the soil is depleted. If you are dropping your seed into gardens that are, sand and clay and non-nutritious, it will go nowhere. But if you take those same beautiful seeds, which are the energy, all that you bring to life, and you plant them in a place that nourishes you and forms you, you will grow the most beautiful garden. And I am so grateful for that imagery that you shared with us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Like forever, I will be quoting Harrison Haynes for saying, you've planted your seeds in the wrong garden. So thank you,
And
God, whoever that came from, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, Jesus. What an amazing, amazing thought.
that was so impressionable to me too. I wrote that down and I wonder if that's a book title. But the second part of that was, it's time to wake up. So there was a clear call to action. There was the descriptor, which is so beautifully done. And then it's time to wake up. And what did you do, Harrison? You woke up. Like,
Jubilant.
yeah, woke up. Yeah, and you felt all your emotions, everything, like the full range of all that was held in. You experienced those emotions by waking up. And that imagery, again, I feel like we can ask for help in our dreams too.
Oh,
He
sure.
didn't maybe ask for it to come as a dream, but he asked for help. But I think we can ask in our dreams. I know we can, and get answers. So that
It's
was really
woo-woo, but
powerful.
your angels can't work on your behalf unless you talk to them and ask them. They cannot. Ask for God, ask for Jesus, ask for whoever you believe in, the angels, the universe, to help you. You need help, you need to ask.
Amen. Amen. And then what did he do? He went to a church called Restoration. It's like, oh, that's so perfect, truly.
Yes, it is. Blessings for Harrison and his family going forward. Thank you all for listening. Please tune in again next week at 7 a.m. on Sunday.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of 7 on Sundays.
The 7 on Sundays podcast represents the opinions of Dr. Chez Leeby and Stephanie Boye based on our experience. It also shares the stories, behaviors, and opinions of our guests that we do not necessarily condone or view as healthy. 7 on Sundays is an open forum to discuss what is happening with our listening audience. Some names and details of our guest stories have been changed to protect their anonymity. This podcast is not a substitute for mental health treatment. If you are in crisis and in need of mental health support, please call 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It is free and confidential.
join the conversation and connect with us through our website, 7onsundays.com. That's the number 7onsundays.com. We encourage everyone to do their own research. Thank you and be well.